if we talk about that up to 60% of medical costs are driven by social factors, how do you start saying, I'm not just going to go after the same medical lines of service, but I'm actually going to start looking at some of those social factors and proving out that ROI.
Welcome to the Healthcare Grind, where we cut through the noise in the healthcare industry to bring you the latest trends, innovations, and insider insights. I'm Jess Harthcock, and I'm joined by my co-host, Lon Hecht, as we embark on a journey to connect early-stage healthcare companies, payer executives, and investors with the knowledge and perspectives that matter most. Get ready to grind in the fast-paced realm of healthcare innovation. And for more advanced content, go to healthcaregrind.com.
Hi, everyone. This is Lon Hecht from the Healthcare Grind. Welcome back again. I really appreciate it. Joined by Jessica Harthcock, and we have an amazing guest today, Julia Cohen Sebastien, who's the co-founder and CEO of Grayce, spelled Grayce. We're really lucky to have her on the podcast this morning. So, Julia, please say good morning and maybe give a little quick background about yourself.
Yeah, good morning. It's great to be here. Thanks, Lon. Thanks, Jess. I'm Julia Cohen Sebastien, co-founder and CEO of Grayce. We are really a social care company that helps individuals and caregivers to navigate and manage care. So what we provide is really a combination of support from a dedicated social worker and a comprehensive tech platform to navigate all those lifetime barriers to care engagement and adherence.
Really interesting. So can you take it a step further and help me figure it out? I've a mother. I was going to say her age, but she listens to the podcast sometimes and she would probably break my neck. So let's just call my mom 55, although she's not. She's a senior. How would that work with us? She's in Philadelphia. I live out by the beach in New Jersey. How would it work? Like if she had this benefit available, can you tell us what it looks like and walk us through it?
Yeah, so we support people whether they're calling for themselves or whether they're calling for a loved one. A lot of families are caring for loved ones from afar and trying to navigate everything that needs to be done. So let's say you were to engage with Grayce. What we would do is match you to a dedicated social worker who'd support you through that whole journey. You'd have access to everything in the platform as well, educational content, community and support groups, a marketplace of resources, tools to help you self-manage some of those needs. But when you work with that social worker, the way that typically would work, you'd set up an initial consult. You might invite your mom to it if you like. You might invite any of the other loved ones in your family who are helping to manage her care, or even those that are not in the family that are helping to manage her care. And you'd have an initial conversation about circumstances, needs, preferences, and they'd create a personalized care plan for you. Identify any resources that are most relevant to your family's needs within her local community. And then they act more as a care manager and really helping you to take things off your plate and get things set up. So, if you're navigating things like, how do I keep her safely in the home? They can help you through that whole process, right? They can help in identifying some of the quick hits of, do you need to get an in-home safety assessment, right? When you think about staying in the home, how do you prepare for those costs? How do you prepare for the legal considerations of someone in decline in their golden years? How do you navigate getting the medical care that's needed in the home? Kind of the whole wraparound of, we're not the doctors or the nurses, we're the social workers.
Are you helping them access things like advanced care planning? And if they have palliative care benefit or something like that available, are you trying to bring all the resources that are available maybe from their health plan to them and outside resources as well?
Yes, that's exactly right. So regardless of who's sponsoring the benefit, whether it's a health plan, whether it's an employer, in most cases, they've invested in other programs. And so we really do that kind of 360 review of the individual and that family unit and understanding what's available to them, whether it's from the community, whether it's sponsored by that enterprise buyer, right? Or whether it's something that's a private pay program and helping them to navigate those trade-offs and getting those things set up for them.
That's great. So, Julie, can you dive in a little deeper and talk about the business model itself? So who pays for this program? And maybe even if you can, touch on some of the results that you have. Are you in certain markets? Some stuff like that. That'd be great for our listeners.
Absolutely. So when we first started Grayce, we started with an elder care focus, and we started in the employer space. At this point, we now serve people caring for any type of loved one or themselves. So kind of the top use cases would be caring for an elder, caring for a child, or caring for yourself or another adult, for example, somebody with a complex illness like cancer. And we do it on a per engaged model is the typical default. So, employers would sponsor for employees to sign up for the program through the whole course of the year. And we are moving also into the health plan space. And we look at this as really, I think about healthcare as there's really three pillars, right? There's the medical care, there's the mental health care, and there's the social care. And we've done a lot moving into mental health care. And this is kind of the next leg of the stool, so to speak, where it's time to really dive deeper into what that ROI looks like in a lot more of a structured way and understanding how that achieves medical cost savings. And of course, the stickiness of beneficiaries. So when you think about our ROI on the employer side, we've done that in terms of looking at their retention, the leave impact, brand building, right, satisfaction with your employer, et cetera. And next, we'll then also be looking at medical cost, same as we go into the health plan space. So I'd say on the employer space, we've seen among those that use Grayce, 38% lower attrition versus those who do not use Grayce. About half of folks have said that we've mitigated their need to take leave, time away from their job or scale back. And virtually everyone has said that we've saved them time, and 2/3 of folks say that we save them money as well. So really tapping into the things that are relevant to someone's life as they access the care system, whether that be healthcare, childcare, and elder care, and removing any of those barriers to get access.
So it sounds like you started with employers. Now you're spending more and more times with payers. What is kind of the appetite from a payer standpoint on things of, like this right now? Are they looking at this for their self-insured employers? Are they looking at it as maybe signing an ASO kind of contract with you and rolling that out to their various employers that way? Or are they thinking and contemplating fully insured at this point? Can you give us a little background on that?
Yeah, I'd say it's yes and. So we look at this as there's the commercial population, but then also going towards the government population. And keep in mind, we're a totally virtual model. So from my experience in population health, in the health plan world, we'll focus more so on Medicare than we will Medicaid. And that's really about ultimately saving medical costs. So what people are attracted to, if you think about it, there's kind of continuous evergreen focus areas in a health plan, right? So in this case, we're really helping people to engage a differential population, right, that they may not be tapping into with their care management programs. We're bringing to them a third-party branded organization that's not tethered to either the health plan or the provider. And we're able to then address some of their greatest life stressors, right? We're not calling and trying to opt them into a medical management program that they might have said no to, or they might have tried not to answer the phone to, right? Instead, we're calling and talking about things that they care about. Those that they're caring for, right? Whether they're safe, money, how they're going to pay for that care, whether they have their legal affairs in order, and their day-to-day life. That just happens to be what's most then relevant to them being able to get that care and navigate it. So building that relationship more with a social worker and then being able to earn that trust to be able to engage them in other types of programs and build that relationship for more of that ongoing adherence. So those are really, continuous things, no matter what a health plan is focused on, of course, right? It's how do you get people engaged? How do you get them focused on the right things to save money? And then at the same time, you're really building a stickiness of relationship because you're solving their personal problems rather than solely just trying to get them into treatment or a medical management program that they may not want.
How long do you find that members are typically engaged with the program? Are you finding that it's for a short period of time, maybe 4 to 6 months when their needs are met? Or are you finding that there's some longitudinal engagement based on maybe a cancer diagnosis or something a little more severe?
So that's a really great question, right? I look at this through the lens of population health. So I think about everything in a pyramid, right? It depends on what segment of the population you are when you're coming to Grayce. So definitely those who are dealing with more complex situations or they have the kinds of care journeys that are ongoing are coming to Grayce in most cases year over year. Then there are those that have kind of subclinical level needs, right? Maybe they're just finding childcare, or maybe they're just trying to get a plan together for a senior who's declining or something. In that case, right, it'll be a little bit more episodic. So in the employer space, we address them all, right? People might be coming to us with complex, highest medical cost claimants, you're thinking about complex cancer or whatever that might be, people with strokes and falls, people at end of life. But we also see people, for example, where someone is in a chronic situation. Maybe there's dementia And people tend to come in more at those milestones, right? So just before and just after those milestones, and they're trying to make big decisions or big transitions. And that's really when you earn the right to get them to continue to come back, right? So I like to tell people, like, this isn't about brushing your teeth. I don't want people calling Grayce every day, of course. We want to be there at their pivotal moments. And so when we look at this, we look at, in terms of how we get paid, we care about year over year engagement when it's relevant to that individual. So that journey might be that someone's involved in a spurt. It might be that they're involved more continuously because it's complex. But usually when people have those types of pivotal moments, then they're coming back in the population to manage those next set of needs.
One more follow-up to that question. What percentage of actual patients do you work with versus the caregivers, or kind of maybe the broader circle of that member's family? Because I always find that interesting, especially with what you're doing. And you mentioned you even serve kids in there, parents that have a child with a complex need. So what does the breakdown look like for you there?
Yeah, so that's a little bit complex when you talk about the employer population, because of course you'd have to be 18 plus to use Grayce. And so anyone who's caring for kids, they're caring for a loved one. And then because in the employed segment, you're really talking about people that then tend to be caring as well for a senior who's not in the employed world. But it's been frankly very shocking to us just how quickly the self-care category has been growing. And I don't mean self-care in terms of like, eye rollers and cucumbers on the eyes. I mean self-care of like, I'm navigating a chronic illness. I don't know how to manage all my disability forms. I don't know if I can stay in the workforce. And how do I manage all these different doctors and coordinate that all? And hey, I need to figure out, like, I need to get a second opinion, and finding what are the programs that are available to you? How do we get you into those, get you set up with it all? So now that's in our top 3 use cases. And it's actually pretty evenly split on the employer side. So I think it just comes down to what's the age, right? Like, as we look at doing this in the Medicare population, of course, the more frail or older seniors are not necessarily going to use our program, but the loved ones, particularly among the more costly patients, tend to have a caregiver involved if they're not necessarily part of, say, the Medicaid or the duals population. They'd be more likely to.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Medicare. That's where I was going to go next, but you kind of beat me to it. Are you looking at that as a typical benefit for Medicare, or is that more of like a Medicare supplemental benefit as something to be added?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole market landscape is evolving there. When I look at this, I mean, I used to work at a health plan and I worked in population health. And so I look at this as, if you're going to do something in a health plan, you might as well be going after medical costs and quality while trying to drive better experience, right? That's just how I think about the world at this point. Supplemental benefits, I think there's a space there, but I don't think it's necessarily as attractive. And I think we've hit the high water mark for the foreseeable future on supplemental benefits. So I would rather look at this as, more through the lens of kind of the way a health plan is thinking about social determinants, but thinking more holistically about if you actually approach that, not just with, endless number of point solutions, but you think about that in more of an integrated model with more of a population health approach. What does that mean for how you can unlock better medical management and actually understand what are some of the root cause problems that might cause downstream medical costs, right? Like if we talk about that up to 60% of medical costs are driven by social factors, how do you start saying, I'm not just going to go after the same medical lines of service, but I'm actually going to start looking at some of those social factors and proving out that ROI.
And you focus quite a bit on that. Yeah. Hey, Jess, do you mind if I jump in? There were 2 things I wanted to mention. I was going to ask you a little bit about how you typically engage members, but before we hit that, I'll say that, you mentioned about it's not about getting people into, whatever, a program for chronic back pain or this or that. But at the same time, I would think you're building an incredibly trusting relationship with a patient that you would be far superior in getting people into programs like that than a health plan would be on their own. So I would just say that's something that you're probably thinking about, but I would really track that because I think that can become a part of your ROI story. The percentage of patients that you're touching that actually end up in these type of programs, because I'm sure it's incredibly small on the ones that maybe you're not touching, right? That a health plan's going out on their own. How do you enroll these members? How do you get them engaged?
Yeah. So on the employer side, the way we've done it, looking across the entire population, we communicate it to the entire population and drive enrollment there. Within complex care, right, it's really more about having that target list of folks to engage based on certain diagnoses and what people are looking for in terms of our enterprise buyers. We look at that. You're going to get different engagement rates depending on what you're doing, of if it's a very targeted engagement cohort or if you're looking at the entire population and wanting to drive more of that broad enrollment. And we do that through multiple avenues. So really in the broad employer segment, we're doing everything from trying to get people via email, right, via direct mail, via information sessions and events. But it's really a comprehensive engagement strategy and toolkit that we use through the whole course of the year. On the health plan side, obviously, there's also a little bit more traditional engagement models as well, and being able to call someone on the phone too. But as we all know, right, the engagement rates on that side have certainly changed. So we like to apply the multidisciplinary approach of trying to get people into the program.
Makes sense. Hey, Jess, I want to ask your favorite question, founder story. So I know you love that question. So the question for you, Julia, is, did this come out of necessity, or is this just a gap that you saw? And could you give us a little background on the founder story? Yeah,
so I think it's a little bit of both. For me, there's not like one singular moment or thread in my life that kind of led into healthcare, but I'd say this topic of caring for loved ones for my family has been the main topic that's continued around the dinner table for decades, right? We've had everything from family members navigating long-term brain tumors to multiple sclerosis to strokes and dementia and Alzheimer's. I think that propelled me into healthcare. And then during that time of managing populations, I was at Aetna for a number of years and working in more value-based care. At the same time, I was flying back and forth and taking care of loved ones being in and out of hospitals and feeling like at best I was being treated as a bystander rather than one of the key stakeholders responsible for driving the outcomes of that care when they left the institution, right? And that was enormously frustrating, right? I looked at a lot of the value-based payment models and I said, we're leaving, number one, from a business standpoint, we're leaving a ton of money on the table. Number two, we're not actually driving a strategy that engages people in anything more than like process-based quality measures, right? And you're going to have happier families, you're going to have better outcomes, and you're going to drive lower cost if you do all these things. So it was really my personal background combined with seeing that at the exact moments of the work that I was doing and recognizing I thought there was going to be this next kind of third leg of the stool, and going more into the social world, that there was an opportunity to try to drive what's that next evolution of value-based care? Where does the next set of value come from? And that better experience if we actually mean that in a deeper way.
So Julia, you talked a little bit about how Grayce has evolved. You've started in the employer space. Now you're really moving into that health plan space. How long have y'all been around through this next iteration? Where do you want to be in the next 24 months? And if someone out there is listening, primarily, maybe a health plan exec, we have a lot of health plan execs who listen to this podcast. What do you want them to really know about how this can help their members and how it can drive cost savings? And then what's their go-to action item from this?
Yeah. So we started in very late 2019, just before the pandemic hit.
What a fun time to start a company, Julia.
That's right. Yes. Best laid plans. And, I'd say COVID actually accelerated a lot of focus on our topic, right? Certainly people were paying attention to elder care, but then caregiving just blew up as a broader topic across every type of care scenario. So that certainly has helped propel us to, a set of attention and focus within the employer space. I do think in many ways we cross a lot of categories, right? We're navigation, we're a care management solution. We look at social care, but we integrate into the medical system. And so when I look 24 months from now, right, we've really been building our approach with a population health and data-driven backbone to it, right? We're not just intended to be a coordinator services business. And so I look at this as there's a huge amount of opportunity in going into more complex populations within the health plan world and really demonstrating how you can achieve those medical cost savings, how in the new payment model evolutions, right, you'll be better equipped to accomplish those new requirements, whether that be social determinants, whether that be HEDIS measures and STARS. And so we really want to prove that out. And that's, for us, it's really finding that right pilot partner in the next handful of months based on what we're doing and demonstrating that ROI for them to be able to scale across the population. So if you're interested to have that conversation, definitely let me know.
Well, how do people get in touch with you, Julia? What's the best way?
Well, you can certainly email me. So Julia, Julia, at withgrayce.com. It's withgrayce.com. Or you can shoot me a note on LinkedIn or your other preferred social channel.
Sounds good. So one thing I want to say, congratulations on your recent fundraising. You just raised a Series A, north of $10 million. Congrats on that. So question is, what do you plan to invest in? Is BD a big part of that, I'm guessing? Typically, that first round BD is a big part of it. And Jess and I are on the business development side. That's just kind of our love anyway. But curious what your plans are.
Absolutely. So obviously we've talked about new channel entry. So that's certainly a big area of focus. New product entry as well, and expanding our broader platform. And then on the product side, right, it's really continuing to underscore the investments we've been making in the data-driven approach to what we're doing, right? So really looking at that more like a care management platform and how we break that down in data-driven segmentation and personalized care journeys. So a huge amount of focus there as well internally.
Obviously, you want to be able to track things like gap closure, things of that nature. And then one thing that I was just thinking about that you'd probably be fantastic at, and you're probably thinking about it anyway, is if you had access to health plan ADT feeds when people hit the hospital or were coming out of the hospital, probably do a fantastic job on impacting readmission rates, right? Because you, once again, trusting relationship, and that cannot be said enough that, health plans typically don't have very trusting relationships with their members, but a vendor such as, yourself would have that and could really make a difference there. So
absolutely. I sometimes joke that, when people are trying to grow up very quickly, what we do is we're like the discharge planner that follows you home. So absolutely.
Exactly. Well, this has been a great episode. Jess, do you have any last minute questions before we wrap?
No, Julia, this has been really interesting to learn about. And I think as we think about what's in the marketplace, you highlighted some key differentiators and you have some great data already to share. And I think your company thinks about the model differently. And I almost see it, Lon, to a point you made earlier, as kind of like this wraparound service that can plug in anywhere. It's not taking place of anything necessarily, but it's a really amazing service that can plug in lots of different places to drive more value to what health plans have already invested in and things like that. So I see a lot of potential here. I'd be anxious to check in on this company and Julia again in about a year and hear about the progress. So that's something we might have to do on.
I agree. And, I found out about you when I read about fundraising. And first thing I did was reach out to Julia because, it's a service, quite honestly, that I could utilize. My mother's not quite there, but she's getting close to there where I need to be thinking about that. And I guess the key point is maybe there isn't a there, right? Could use her now. I mean, use your service right now. Because I guess there are phases, there are things that, even for myself and my wife and others, that we have needs that having social support can make a huge difference for. So we really want to thank you so much for joining us. It's been a really great episode here. And for those of you that would like more advanced content, please go to the Healthcare Grind or healthcaregrind.com. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast channel. Julia, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you both. Yeah, it's been very fun. Great to meet you all.
As we wrap up this episode of the Healthcare Grind, we want to thank you, our incredible audience, for tuning in. If you found today's insights valuable, don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a review on your preferred podcast platform. Your feedback fuels our grind. For more exclusive content and updates, visit our website, healthcaregrind.com. Until next time, keep grinding, stay informed, and lead the charge in shaping the future of healthcare. This is Jess and Lon signing off from the Healthcare Grind.